You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 115. Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from Educalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life.
Hello there and welcome. We are so happy to have you here with us today. In this episode of the Balanced Educator Podcast, we've invited Brandi Raehal onto the show to tell us how she uses the Educalm Classroom Social Emotional Learning and Mindfulness program in her grade 2 classroom. Brandi shares in this episode how this program supported student resilience and growth mindset, especially during the challenges of remote learning. She also shares how Educalm Classroom influenced her personal and professional growth. Brandi explains the outcomes and transformations around social emotional development, self-regulation, classroom management, time management, and classroom culture that she noticed from using Educalm Classroom, and how the skills students learn from this program reach far past the classroom. We are so excited to share this episode with you. There'll be lots of great takeaways for how teaching mindfulness and social emotional learning in your classroom can be so beneficial to your students, to yourself, to the entire classroom culture. But before we get into the interview, we're super excited to share this week's sponsor, Time Timer. Time Timer is a visual timer that's clinically proven to increase self-regulation in children. It is this awesome tool that we love using in our classroom to help students to understand time, to help them to manage time, and to integrate lots of super important skills around time. So Time Timer is this visual timer, so it looks like a stopwatch where as you drag the time to how much time you want to put on your timer, you see like a color that goes with it. So once you start the timer and time is passing, that color slowly disappears. It's super visual, so it makes it so much easier than just having like a countdown clock, because students can see the time passing and it really helps them to improve that time management skill. There are two types of time timers that I love using in my classroom. One is a physical timer, so they have different sizes of this great physical timer that you can have in your classroom. A nice big one that you can have in the front of the classroom, and there's smaller ones if you want to use them for stations, or if you want to use them for centers, or use them to put on a specific student's desk to help them with their time management and staying on task and staying focused. So that one is great. And they also have a desktop time timer app, which I love. You can set and save a bunch of different timers that you can give different names and choose different colors. So if you have specific time measurements that you do regularly in your classroom, you can just have these saved and ready to go for you. It's just part of your daily routine. Really helps with transitions and really helps with time management. You have to check out Time Timer. Go to timetimer.com/Educalm for more information, to see what it looks like, because I'm hoping when I'm explaining it to you, it makes sense and you're understanding what it looks like, but it's much easier to understand if you actually see a picture of it. So definitely go check it out at timetimer.com/Educalm, and that's spelled EDUCALME. All right. So in this episode, Brandi is going to be explaining how she uses the Educalm Classroom Social Emotional Learning and Mindfulness program in her classroom. So just so that our conversation makes sense, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Educalm Classroom, just in case you haven't heard about it or you haven't checked it out yet. So Educalm Classroom is a program that Josiane and I created to solve our problem of students lacking the skills that they need to manage their emotions and to be able to focus in class. So we recognized that there was a lot of anxiety, depression, and just distractibility in our classrooms. And we had used mindfulness in our own lives to help us manage our emotions, manage the stress of being a teacher, and had so much success for ourselves that we wanted to teach this to our students too. But our problem was we couldn't find a program that was ready-made that we felt fit in our classrooms. So we both teach in French immersion classrooms. So we needed a program that was online, that was bilingual, and we wanted something that didn't require any prep, that was just ready to use. But we just couldn't find that out there, and we would spend hours and hours looking on YouTube and Pinterest and things like that to try to find resources. But once we would piece them together, they weren't doing the teaching that was required, like the sequential teaching that was required to build these skills in our students. So we decided to just create the program of our dreams ourselves so that it existed, and then other teachers would be able to use it too. So that's how Educalm Classroom was born. So in Educalm Classroom, what you're going to find are 5-minute guided audio mindfulness practices that you listen to each day with your students. Over time, by listening to these audios each day, they're going to build the skills of mindfulness, of they're going to build their social emotional development toolkits. They're going to be able to focus for longer. They're going to be able to manage their emotions and have breathing skills and thinking skills and all sorts of different skills in their toolkit to manage their emotions. And the beautiful thing that happens with using this program is that not only are students able to kind of manage their own emotions, but it really creates this wonderful sense of community in the classroom where there's this openness to talking about our emotions, supporting each other, understanding that emotions are normal. It's a big part of our lives, and that in order to have our brain and body in a state where it's ready to learn, we have to manage our emotions first. So the Educalm Classroom program gives you guided audios for every single day of the school year. So you don't have to worry about planning it, creating it. You just have to log in and press play. Now, the other thing that you'll find in Educalm Classroom are printables. So there's printable lesson plans that are going to give you, the teacher, more information about that unit. So the program has different units with themes like mindfulness, emotions, positive self-talk, growth mindset, the 5 senses, all sorts of different themes through which students will practice these mindfulness practices. So within each unit, we give you a lesson plan that can help you to figure out how you might want to integrate this in other areas of your teaching curriculum. So to do some cross-curricular teaching, we give printables for students to help them to reflect on the practice and what they're learning. We give activities, we give posters. All of those are just supporting materials that you can choose to use if it fits your teaching style and your goals. But the core practice is just listening to those 5-minute guided audios every day with your students. You'll see Brandi explains in this episode how that time is so worth it and how you gain back that time. So I just wanted to give an overview of what the program is so that this episode makes sense. Also, if you want to take a deeper look at this, go to educalm.com. We have lots of information on a website about this program, and you can also sign up for the free trial so that you can take a look at it and see what the first unit looks like. You'll get that first unit for free, and then you'll get a really good sense of what's in the full year program, which gives you more than enough resources for the entire school year. All right, enough from me. Let's get into this interview with Brandi. Hello there, Brandi. Thank you so much for being on the Balanced Educator Podcast with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure.
I'm so excited to share your perspective of what Educalm Classroom was like in your classroom. You were one of our ambassadors this year, which meant that every month you filled out a feedback survey on how the practice was going in your classroom. Now, this was something that we were really excited to do this year because we knew what the outcomes are of Educalm Classroom that we were intending the outcomes to be, but we really wanted to have data to back up or to find out if those outcomes that we were intending were actually happening in classrooms. So we got a bunch of teachers to do these feedback surveys for us. And as we're recording this, it's the end of the school year of 2019, 2020. So a big, wild school year for all of us. And I was able to look over kind of your data and your answers over the school year. And it was so neat to see your transformations in yourself as a teacher and in your students and what stood out to you each month. So I'm really excited to just sort of chat about those things with you today so that our listeners can kind of understand what they might experience if they decide to start doing Educalm Classroom in their classroom. So that's kind of our intention today. So let's get started first. Can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, I'm Brandi Raehal, and this was my 19th year of teaching, and I teach second grade in Colorado.
So awesome. So I'd love to know, what was your inspiration or your reason for wanting to do Educalm Classroom in your classroom?
So we've been doing social emotional learning for the past 10 years, and we had a program that was very successful, but broke it down K2, 3, 5, and then middle school. So by the time I got them in second grade, it was the third time that they've heard it, and it lost all its value because they had been there, done that.
Right. So you wanted something kind of fresh to change things up.
Right,
Awesome.
Exactly.
Great. So let's talk now about what does Educalm Classroom look like in your classroom? So what's the routine and how do you use this resource?
So when they come in the morning, they unpack and get ready, and we start with Educalm right away. It's the best 15 minutes of my day. So when they first come in, they have a piece of paper where they tell me how they're feeling. Either they can write a word or an emoji. I don't want them to be stressed out. And then we do our lesson, and then they do another emoji. And if they're sad or upset, that gives me a chance to know I need to check in with this kid one-on-one throughout the day to make sure that I can help them any way I can.
That's so great. I love how you're kind of tracking the before listening to the Educalm audio and then after to see how they're feeling. And like you said, to be able to check in with them throughout the day and know how you can support them. So as a teacher that's been doing social emotional learning in your classroom for so long already, I'm guessing you must really understand the importance of dealing with emotions before our students are ready to learn. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. The kids have to be in the right frame of mind. If something happened at home, and we might think it's small, but it's not to them. If they get in a fight with their brother or sister, or they burnt their toast, they're not ready to learn until they can communicate that, talk about it, and know somebody cares. Once they know they are safe and they know somebody loves them, then they're willing to learn. And then you get your power right there when they know that you love them and they're ready.
That's so wonderful. Creating that safe space for our students is so important, and meeting them where they're at instead of expecting them to be somewhere if they're just not there yet. So As you tracked these emojis or these words before and after the practice, what stood out to you?
A lot of time they would come to school stressed or tired, and after they would do their Educalm and do their deep breathing, we did that every day no matter what our lesson was. I would always see more of I'm relaxed, or I'm feeling better, or happy or calm. And then they were ready to do their day. They were ready for literacy. If I would have just started literacy right when we came in, none of them would have been ready, and our scores would not have showed the improvement that we did get.
That's wonderful. So you noticed improvement in their reading scores over time?
Absolutely, and their math as well.
And would you say that that's pretty related to the Educalm classroom practice?
It's absolutely 100% related to Educalm. I don't think if we would have started off balanced and focused, they would have been ready. And they knew that was their time that they were loved, because I always checked in with them one-on-one.
That's great. One thing that you said in your ambassador questionnaire that really stood out to me was you talked about how in the past, school was like, as soon as the bell rings, we go, go, go till the end of the day, till the bell rings. And you said that now that you're doing Educalm Classroom, that's changed. Can you explain that?
Yes, I always would call it on your market set, go, and then you didn't get a breath until the end of the day. Now we get those breaths in the morning, so then we feel more calm, and it doesn't feel like it's so rushed and hurried. And I would use the breathing techniques after recess, after specials, after lunch. We used them throughout the day. It got so well that they could do it themselves, and they didn't need me to prompt them. You'd see them when they needed that break, they would take it on their own, and they became very successful at self-monitoring themselves.
That is amazing, especially for kids so young, 7, 8 years old, and they're able to, manage their own emotions, that self-regulation piece. That's so neat to see that develop over time.
It got even better with teaching remotely at home. We were all nervous and scared, and the parents were horrified, and the kids were teaching their parents how to breathe and how to be mindful. And that was the biggest transformation I saw. Was these little kids, the little kids teaching their parents how to be mindful. And we've got this, Mom and Dad. We can do this. Let's take a deep breath.
Oh my God. I have goosebumps all over my body right now. That is just amazing. How beautiful that these kids can teach such an important tool to the adults of a generation that the mindset was very much hustle, go, 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 work harder, no time for yourself. That's selfish. And now we're changing that with the next generation, that life is meant to be enjoyed and savored, and life should be fun. Why do we need to rush to get things done and not enjoy the process?
Absolutely.
That's so cool. So you talked also in your ambassador questionnaire about the self-talk module. It seemed like you had big transformations for yourself after having done this module, and your students as well. Can you talk about that unit in Educalm Classroom? I
think I had a bigger success than they did, but they were able to see my success. So I was doing the program with them on that one, especially. I knew what the program was, and I loved the voices, and they were nice and calm, but that would be my chance to walk around. But this one, I actually did it with them because it was a whole new ball game for me, and it was a whole new mind shift that I went through, and it was huge because I was in the generation of do better, do great, don't think about yourself, think about others, go, 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 go. So the self-talk was huge improvement for me, which transferred to my 4 sons. So I'm glad to see that they're able to see my change in a positive way, that they can go into a change in their positive way too.
That's amazing. Are there any specific mantras or affirmations that you practice now after having done the positive self-talk unit in Educalm Classroom?
My favorite is just breathe. It's simple, but it's very poignant. Just breathe.
Yeah. And how many times a day do we need to remind ourselves of that, right? It's so easy to get caught up in the rush. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now, I'd love to hear what have been your observations of how Educalm Classroom has influenced resiliency in your students. This has been a wild year with remote learning and COVID fear and lots of big things going on. How has using Educalm Classroom influenced your students' ability to be resilient through all this?
In the classroom, when we were still there, I saw a lot more grit. I saw kids this year not give up, where in the past they would be like, this is too hard, I don't want to do this. They had skills because of Educalm that they were able to go, yeah, this is hard, but I can do it. And I know that my teacher will be here or the classmates will be here. So I'm going to go ahead and try it, where before they're like, no, I don't want to look stupid, which I hate to use that word. But then I really saw their resilience when they had to work from home, when they were teaching their families, hey, Mom, Dad, we got this. Yes, it's different, but we got this. Let's just breathe. Let me show you how I like to breathe. That was the hugest resilience I've seen.
That is so cool. I love hearing that. That just makes me so happy. So then let's talk next about social emotional development. So how did that affect your students? You talked about talking a lot about emotions in your classroom, and how has using the program affected your students' social emotional development?
I want to talk about one particular student because she had the most amount of change. This little girl is a very kind-hearted girl, but she's very angry. Her number one emotion is anger, and she would lash out, would bite, kick, scream, and she loved the breathing. She even came up with her own breathing technique. where she was a rocket ship. So you would breathe in and go like this, and then the rocket ship would star down, and on your exhale. She had so much ownership, and when other kids were doing her type of breathing, it changed her whole personality. And for the first time, you saw happiness. You saw emotions that were not anger, emotions that she came up with. And so some of the kids she was really angry at the most, when they were doing hers, she almost let that anger go. And it was a huge transformation I saw in her, that she stopped fighting, she stopped kicking, she stopped screaming. Was she perfect? No, but it was almost a 180 child.
That's amazing. And I saw that you mentioned also that this child had transformations that the parents noticed as well.
Yes, at conferences, they're like, whoa, what have you done to our child? She's not nearly as angry. And they were very grateful. I'm very thankful.
So nice to hear.
And that was huge. Yes, so nice to hear.
Yeah, when we're seeing progress in the classroom and that progress is also going home as well. That means that those skills are really getting ingrained because she's able to implement those breathing strategies, not just at school where she's used to doing it, but can also bring that into her regular life. And really that's the whole point, right? Is to help us have a good life.
And she was one of those kids who would trigger, do, and then think. She learned throughout the year, okay, there's a trigger. Let me think it through first and then react. Did it happen all the time 100%? No, but she grew so much. I'm so proud of her.
That's amazing. So you also talked about having like a poster with a bunch of emotion names. Can you talk about how you use that in your classroom?
Yeah, so it was a very large poster. And so it'd say, how are you feeling? Happy? And then it'd have some adjectives that went with happy. And some of them, and when we were reading books with characters and they'd come across a word that said elated, they'd be like, oh, elated, that's a happy word. Let's put it under a chart. So it was a chart that we used for reading, writing. Anytime they came up with a word, we would add it on. So every day I would ask them, how are you feeling today? And so I wanted them to get away from happy, sad, and really come up with words. So if they were elated, they could say I was elated. And then, oh, it's my birthday and I get presents. So they were really triggering in the word that they needed to tell me how they were feeling.
That's amazing. And I'm reading a book right now. It's called Permission to Feel by Mark Brackett. And he is an emotion scientist, essentially. He researches emotions and, managing emotions and all that. And he talks so much about the importance of emotional vocabulary to increase our emotional intelligence, and how having the vocabulary and the words to express how we're feeling helps us to digest or to process those feelings so much easier. And that naming piece is huge. So that's really awesome that you integrated that in addition to, what they were doing in Educalm classroom to really build that vocabulary. What was the title of that book? It's called Permission to Feel.
Awesome. That might be a perfect summer read for me.
Yes, it is great. And it's a really easy read. I highly recommend it. Like easy in the sense that it's scientifically driven without being too sciencey in the wording. So he includes stories and things like that. So it's very fun and easy to read. I highly recommend it. Permission to Feel. And I'll link that in the show notes for this episode as well. So for you guys listening, if you want to catch that title, it'll be on our in the show notes for this episode. All right. So the next thing I'd love to talk about is classroom management. So how did Educalm Classroom, doing this as a daily practice, how did that affect your classroom management?
I think it helped because they got empathy. They got empathy for themselves and each other. And again, it wasn't, oh, you stole my pencil, so I'm going to scream or shout at you. It's okay, you stole my pencil. Let's take a deep breath. Okay, now I can ask, can you give me my pencil back, please? So it really helped with a lot of the classroom management issues because they were taking the ownership of themselves, and I didn't really have to do much. At the beginning of the year, you had to teach them how, but by the end, they owned the classroom and they could run it. And if they saw something they didn't like, they had the tools to go up and say, would you two please stop fighting? You're interrupting our learning.
Wow, that is
and that's
amazing.
Second graders. Those are little guys who have the power to tell other kids that you're interrupting my learning.
And what a great way to teach them to advocate for themselves and their needs. That's amazing. And vocalize what they need. And
right, in a positive way that doesn't hurt other people's feelings.
That's wonderful. And it sounds like that helped to create a really positive classroom community if they felt safe to be able to express how they felt and ask others those types of questions. You know, can you stop that? Or it's interrupting my learning. Like, wow, what vocabulary to have as a grade 2 student.
Right, exactly. I don't want to say my classroom was perfect, but it was one of the best ones we had because of the program, and that we always start our day with mindfulness and taking a breath, and that really made the huge difference.
That is wonderful. Let's talk now. You had talked about time management with Educalm Classroom and how that affected the amount of time you had for academics in the day. Could you chat a bit about that?
Yes, so at first, when I thought about giving up 15 minutes, you thought, oh, that's a lot of time. But actually, you don't give it up. You gain it tenfold. So just by starting your day with 15 minutes of how are you feeling and checking in and having them breathe, and they could sit, they could lay on the floor, they got comfortable, they got their mind ready to learn. We actually got it back because we didn't have all the problems that, like the behavior problems we didn't have the I'm giving up, because they had that positive self-talk. So what you put into it, you get back tenfold. So it's the best time investment program I've ever had.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's what every teacher wants to hear, right? More time in the classroom for academics. Amazing. And without feeling like that I have to rush to push it all through.
Right.
That's wonderful. Can you talk next? So you've talked about resiliency, and you talked a little bit about the power of yet. Can you talk more about that growth mindset piece and what your students learned about the power of yet?
Yet might be the smallest word, but it gives them the most growth. So that was one of the biggest mantras we had in the classroom. Yet, like, I can't do this yet. And just adding the word yet changes their whole mindset. I can't ride my two-wheeler yet. But then they'd practice, and they were so proud when they would come in. Guess what? I rode my two-wheeler today. And it was all because of the power of yet. And it could happen outside of school. It could happen inside of school. It's a whole lifelong process just by changing the word yet. And I do that with my own sons. They're like, I can't do this. And I'll just scream at them, yet. And they're like, oh, yeah, yet.
Josiane and I really adopted the power of yet in our own personal lives more than ever after reading the book on growth mindset by Carol Dweck. And when we learned about growth mindset, we're like, we need to put this in Educalm Classroom for sure, because this is going to be a game changer for students and teachers and really every human. Just the thought process of, if I can't do something, it's not because I can't do it. It's just I need to practice more. Everything requires practice, which is what school is for, right? We wouldn't have students coming to school if they already knew how to do it. That would be pointless. It's always about that challenge. And if we can get our students excited about facing challenges and knowing that it isn't a bad thing to not be able to do something yet. That's just the normal process. It's just amazing. So yeah, we have 2 units on growth mindset in Educalm Classroom because we think it's just so important.
Agreed.
Yeah. Now, let's chat a little bit about remote learning. Hopefully this isn't going to be something that we have to go through again in 2020, 2021 school year. But I think that what you talked about around how you used remote learning, Educalm Classroom for remote learning, can be useful for us to know, even if we aren't doing remote learning. So could you talk a little bit about how you used Educalm Classroom for remote learning and kind of the outcomes you saw?
We used it in our morning meetings. So we had Google Classroom and we had our Google Meets, and we would do that. And they loved it because it was exactly like we would do at school. It was one area of their school day that was exactly the same. Because yes, I teach reading, but it was completely different. Yes, I teach math, but it was completely different. This actually can be taught anywhere. And once they knew how to do it, they could lay down, they could sit up, they could close their eyes, they can leave their eyes open. They know what felt comfortable for them. And so that's how we would start our morning with our remote learning. And it gave them a peace of mind, and they felt so much safer.
That's wonderful. What a great way to start the day in kind of this weird situation that they're not used to. If there's something that can kind of ground them back to feeling like they're in the classroom, that must have been huge.
Right. And it was huge for me too, because this was a huge learning curve. Technology and I are not the best of friends. And when you're thrown in baptism by fire. You're like, oh my goodness. So I had to do a lot of deep breathing. And the first month was probably the most negative month I've had in my life. But I used Educalm to help me breathe and get focused and recentered. And I used yoga, and that helped. And the rest of it was much smoother sailing, and it wasn't bad at all.
That's amazing. Talk to me about, so you have children, and that meant you're teaching as a remote, as a teacher doing remote teaching, but then you also have kids at home that you're supporting in their at-home learning. Did you use Educalm Classroom at home with your kids at all?
I absolutely did. I used it with all four of them, and we would put on the it's not a video, but the audio. Both of you have beautiful voices, and they're nice and calm, and it helps to set focus, and you keep calm, and okay, guys, we can do this. And I had my computer. They had their computers around me, so I'm trying to talk like this. They're trying to talk, and we're trying to spread out so we don't hear too much. It was quite funny and comical now that we look back on it. At the time, it was kind of stressful.
Yeah. That's great that you transfer that not only in your classroom, but that you were bringing the benefits of Educalm Classroom into your home as well. So cool. So for all teachers, just so you know, you can use Educalm Classroom with your own family. Absolutely. When you have a membership, you can use it with any student that you work with and any family member that you live with or work with, however you want to say that.
My commute to school is a good 45 minutes. So what my goal is for next year is to figure out how to get it on audio, to put it in the car. So my boys and I have a calming as we go into school, and then I'll get the double dose of doing it with my students.
There we go. That's a great idea. I love that. So next thing I'd love to know, things that you're implementing in the classroom just aren't going to be perfect all the time. You're going to run into challenges. So what are some of the challenges that you ran into with using Educalm Classroom?
The only challenges I ran into were technology, and it's probably more my error. Like I would get the program all ready, get it to go start, and then it'd be a technology error, and I'd be like, okay, kids, write down how you're feeling, write down some more words where I'm trying to get this to start. That would be my only issue. It's an awesome program.
So do you find that your students kind of just dove in right away? You didn't have any problems with student engagement or anything like that?
No, because they had been taught with a different program, and so social emotional have been there for a while, and they might talk a little bit or giggle and laugh if I couldn't get it to work, which made me a little more stressed, but I just breathed, and so it was actually a great teachable moment because I tell them, I'm feeling stressed right now, it's not working. Okay, now I can do this, and so it was a great moment for them too, to see that we're real people and we go through these same emotions they do.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's really great to hear that it went so smoothly for you. I like to hear that. That's wonderful. So that's really all of the big questions I had for you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners about, if they're thinking of starting Educalm Classroom in their classrooms and they're not quite sure, do you have any advice or anything you would tell to a teacher that's new to this?
If you're on the fence, just jump. Just do it, because it will be the best 15 minutes of your life and the kid's life, and you will get the time back tenfold. So just do it.
That is wonderful advice. Thank you so much, Brandi, for being here with us today and sharing your experience. We really appreciate you and the work that you're doing in your classroom and in the world.
Thank you so much. It was great being here.
All right. We hope that listening to this episode helps you to sort of imagine how you could potentially use the Educalm Classroom program to teach social emotional learning and mindfulness in your classroom. We always get great feedback whenever we have teachers on the show just to talk about how they're using this program in their classroom. Because as teachers, we don't often get the chance to observe other teachers using programs or using tools that we want to start incorporating. So it's kind of like a little professional development / those chats, those really good chats that you have in the lunchroom with colleagues that are doing things in their classroom that you want to try out too. So hopefully this was helpful for you. To get the show notes for this episode, go to educalm.com / TBE115. So again, that's educalm.com, spelled EDUCALME.com/TBE as in the Balanced Educator 115. Now, if you want to try out Educalm Classroom, you can get started for free. Go to educalm.com and sign up for the free trial. The free trial never ends, so you'll have access to it forever. And it gives you our first unit, Introduction to Mindfulness, to use in your classroom with your students. So you'll have 10 guided mindfulness audios to use with your students. You'll have printables, you'll have a lesson plan, you'll have activities, everything you could need to get started with mindfulness in your classroom with your students. Plus, you'll also get a training video. So if you want a little more training on how to get started with this in your classroom, there's a free video in there for you about how to get started with Educalm Classroom with success that'll walk you through all the steps and answer our most commonly asked questions and help you to avoid common mistakes. So again, go to educalm.com and sign up for the free trial to get started. All right. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. We appreciate you and all the wonderful work you're doing in the world, in your classroom, at home, in your community. You are awesome. And if no one told you that today, I will be the one to tell you, you are awesome. All right. If you got value from this episode, please share it with someone that you think would enjoy it too, and have a wonderful week.